if you're running a business, you want to run it like you're going to sell it tomorrow. So it's got to be
we've heard
tight
that a couple of times.
Yeah,
yes.
so
ready for sale.
And we went off to basically see if that was where we're at, and they came back and said, look, systems are great, culture's good, brand's strong, revenue's great, profit ratio from turnover we were running really well, 50%. So that was great. That's a massive profit margin. We were running it tight. They said you're in great shape. And then they came, as Andrew said, they came back with a buyer within about 6 months and said, look, we've canvassed this, and that got the ball rolling. So we're actually 3 years ahead of where we wanted to be. So
no one's ever lucky. I think the only lucky you get in life is where you're born, and then you make the rest.
Stick around. It's going to be a good ride. Mate, have a look around. For real? So first time out of the office, out of the set, out of the Little Fish Factory.
Fish Factory.
No other down God's country. I say God's country a lot.
That gets thrown. It's a bit like Legend, right? It gets thrown around a fair bit. Old God's country. You throw God's country.
Yeah.
Williamstown, Geelong, all these places, man. But I tell you what, I feel like we found it, man.
I feel like we found it. Have a look, mate. You got the water out there. The cows have just nicked off. They were here. They're a bit camera.
I thought they were going to stay for the show, the cows. I was hoping they were going to be part of it. So what's that? That's Bash? I don't want to sound like an idiot, man.
Well, that's Phillip Island across there.
That's Phillip Island, yeah.
This is wild. What was that again?
Western Port Bay out there.
Western Port Bay.
For the fact.
That's the heads. If you look out behind you, that's the Western Port heads, and out beyond that is Bass Strait.
Oh man! So I was right. Bass Strait. Bass Strait PK. Now how many? Man, we've got intros. Yeah, let's get the intros rolling.
Oh, we're done.
Well, no, let's do it. We've got Andy. We've got Andy. Bloody.
All right, let's do it. Let's get into it, guys. Welcome back.
Whatever your name is.
Stuart.
Just for the record.
It's to you.
Bang.
The Royal Stuart.
The Royal Stuart.
Welcome back to Australia's #1 podcast. We are the Little Fish, and we speak to the big fish about town each and every week. Offset today. Please like, share, subscribe. And this one is probably pretty important, Benny. They get it on the video.
Yeah, this is huge. You got to
get it out of the ears and into the eyeballs.
Yeah, you got to get the visual happening because this is pretty special, man.
It's a pretty special shout out to the team, Bon, Lean, Benny.
Legends.
They got here early, got it all set up. PK swanned in about half an hour late. The talent come in a bit later, and she was all set up.
Shorts and thongs.
Ready to rock and roll.
What's going on here?
We'll be down the beach shortly, but let's get into it, guys. Today's guests are none other than the co-founders of one of Melbourne's most successful property groups, Hocking Stuart. Under their leadership, what begun as a humble Albert Park office in 85 quickly snowballed into 43 at the time of its sale in 2007. After 27 years at the helm of Hocking Stuart, building a revered real estate empire, our next guests have then funneled their decades of industry experience into their own respective businesses. One a vendor advisory firm that specialised in smooth sales process, and the other a leading real estate network that prides itself on doing things differently. And a recent sale there as well, Benny, which no doubt we'll touch on.
Yeah, bloody oath.
So there's a lot to unpack here, and we've got the two guests, we've got the partners. Today, they're the owners of Greg Hocking Real Estate. Shout out to the intro lady, not anymore.
Well, we'll get into that.
Yeah,
we'll get into that. That's,
And Andrew Stewart Property. Give it up for the men themselves, Greg Hocking and Andrew Stewart.
How are you, fellas?
Thanks for coming on, guys.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Well, thanks for having us, to be honest.
Correct.
Thanks for having us down at this amazing property.
Yeah.
So I think you could call it an estate. Is that the proper terminology? Would it
I
be?
like that.
Yeah,
we can rename the joint. Yeah.
It's does the cameras go out there, Bon? See sort of that second tree line there, that driveway? That's the sprawling estate itself. I thought, Andrew, you said you're going to mow the lawns for it.
I mowed the lawn 3 days ago. It's incredible the growth down here at the moment with the warmth and the rain. It's amazing. I was going to drag the mower out this morning, but I wasn't aware we were going to be outside today, so I thought,
Mate, it looks fantastic. Thanks again, guys. We'd love to start back where it all began. Wendy and yourself have rifled through some early pictures. Can we get some zoom in action on that, Bon?
How's that?
We've got your first auction. Is that what you said? Was that your first auction in Albert Park?
Yep.
Handwritten real estate board.
Is it really?
We've got the great men there, both of them there.
Too.
Question, who called that one?
Greg.
Well done, Greg.
was
Did
the
it sell?
auctioneer. Greg? Was
Yeah,
it?
absolutely. Yeah, they
above
all
reserve.
sold. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic result.
Yeah.
Mr. Wheats.
You know what? This one reminds me of the Jeff. The famous Jeff Bezos one where he's sitting in his room. He's got the Amazon painted on the room.
Yeah.
That's exactly what that one. Or it's probably the same era as well.
That was day one.
Yeah,
Was that
it was that
day
day one.
one?
That was day one.
Yeah.
We
Three
didn't have
phones.
a switchboard. We didn't.
Day one were you Hocking Stuart day one, or were you still toying with
No,
Stuart
we were
Hocking?
Hocking Stuart. Yeah, we're Hocking Stuart.
So was there ever a
Stuart, big
time where was there any discussion around the order of the name
No,
and stuff?
no, I managed to get that sorted.
That was.
I guess we always thought that Stuart Hocking sounded like one person, not
It
two.
sounded like a footy player. Was he a player?
Steve Hocking.
Steve Hocking. Oh, there you go.
They come in and ask for Stuart, so we thought, no, we'll go the other way around.
And,
that's a
then,
good
and then
point.
they'd come in and ask for Hocking. So talk to us, guys. Where did it begin? How did it begin? There's a lot of listeners out there looking to start their own businesses. Benny and I, we're in a partnership. You guys are in a partnership.
Actually, it started before 85 because I was working in Albert Park. I got the opportunity to open an office for another firm, Biggin & Scott, 1978. Worked there for a number of years and got to a point where I needed a salesperson.
Yeah.
And I was looking around, couldn't find anybody. A competitor, the guy that I know, Tim Derham. Tim Derham rang me one day and he said, look, we've got a guy that's approached us for a job. We haven't got a spot for him at the moment. Good guy, Stewie. He's probably worth a shot. Give him a call.
This man.
Yeah. So this is a competitor, and he rang. And anyway, I rang Andrew and I said, we're looking for somebody. Come down for an interview, and we had two candidates, Tom Spanos.
Yes.
And Andrew Stewart. It was a flip of a coin in the finish. It could have been Hocking Spanos, but it ended up being Hocking Stewart. And
I think it was a good move.
yeah, Andrew came down for the interview and spoke about his problems with his girlfriend for about half an hour, and he walked out. And I said to him, boss, what do you think? He said, I got no frigging idea, but we'll give him a go.
Yeah.
And it worked out really well. So we worked. The good thing was it was a good road test for how we would work together, and we worked extremely well together. We shared fees and worked very collaboratively to the point of one day Andrew said, well, why don't we have a crack at this ourselves?
So it was Andrew's idea. It was
Pretty
your
much,
idea, Andrew.
yeah,
It was
pretty
like-
much. And I was dating the boss's daughter at the time, so it made life very difficult. We had a false start in 84, but got going in 85.
Yeah, so got going, had the idea, got the office space, got your phones there as we see in the photo, and got to work.
Absolutely. And
If we didn't have any office space, we were going to work from the front, my lounge room in my house in Middle Park.
Yeah.
We didn't have any.
no,
We didn't have an office of that. We didn't have, as that photo will show, we didn't even have a receptionist. We didn't have.
Oh,
a
you didn't have
switchboard.
much, I promise you. I'll tell you
That was it.
Yeah.
That was Hocking Stuart there, day one.
I guess one of my cues, so for full disclosure, I'm not sure if you boys are aware of this, but me and Pete started a real estate business this year. So we've already got a property development business,
Yep.
Little Fish Properties. And this year, because we've so much stock, we decided that we'd start it was always part of the part of our path. So we've launched Little Fish Real Estate to sell our property. Now, I guess I know where we got our first properties from because we were able to feed them, and that gave us the confidence to start the business. Question is, how do you start if you don't have a shop front and you're just starting out in property? And I know it was a long time ago. How do you convince people to list with you? How do you get your first property?
well, we were fortunate. Well, to get going, we rolled out of an existing business into our new business with a lot of goodwill from what we'd already done personally in the former business. So we had a following that we built around ourselves, which was fantastic, and those people followed us. And
I think also, there was always going to be an overlap between the Biggin & Scott real listings and new ones. And I recall going to all of those people that we had listed at the time we were going to drop the bomb and go, and we said, look, we let them know that we were starting our own business and gave them the opportunity to stay with Biggin & Scott. We said they're a good firm, stay with them if you wish, but we're going. Unfortunately, we're not going to be here to finish your job.
Yeah, right.
And to a man, they all said, no, we'll stick with you guys. And that was,
quite a pat on the back for us. Really,
yeah, a
wasn't
bit of a pat on the back.
That
And
sort of goes
once
to-
you had 3 or 4 properties, then you're off and running. You're out there talking. You've got something to talk about.
So you had your personal brands, which then help you launch.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. I mean, that's what real estate's all about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Build a brand, build a brand around yourself.
But
You
one
can
thing,
go anywhere.
one thing we did set out to do was make a difference, to stand out from the crowd, do some things differently. And one of the things was working 7 days a week. We decided we'd work on Sundays. The whole competition said no, and they got pretty savage at us. Actually, they got very savage.
You might recall the REIV were going to boot us out.
The Real Estate Institute.
Oh, really?
The Real Estate Institute. We decided not to join because it was an old boys club, and we didn't get involved there. And it was 12 months later they invited us to a luncheon meeting, and we went down there, and they were savage on us about our fees because there was fixed fees, and we were very competitive on fees to garner more business, and that was getting favour, and we built up a very strong following after 12 months. And they ambushed us that day, didn't they?
I think they did. And you said, I remember you saying this, you said, well, do you want us inside your tent pissing out or outside pissing in? And they reluctantly allowed us to join the REIP. But they weren't happy with the Sunday stuff because that would upset the apple
Status
cart a
quo,
bit.
yeah.
The status quo of these older chaps who, quite frankly, didn't want to work on the Sundays.
Yeah, so because Benny says it a lot, don't be better, be different. And you guys were talking earlier about being different and separating yourselves.
Yeah, and something we did internally was sharing fees amongst the salespeople to build a very cooperative environment where everybody was interested in selling every fee rather than the salesperson just focusing on their own sale.
Yeah.
We had everybody working hard to make sure every buyer that was available was focused on each individual sale, and that worked very well for us for a while. And then we rolled into doing Sunday auctions. We did some very quirky advertising to get our brand out there and make us stand out from the rest of the crowd, and that helped build quite some momentum for us.
Yeah, that's amazing because we talk to different people about building teams, incentivizing teams, motivating your troops essentially. Because real estate's a different looking beast today with internal commissions and sort of that competitiveness that goes inside these agencies. Where back when you guys were building your team out, it was more of a collaboration around achieving the commissions and that sort of thing, which you guys sounds like you built an amazing team, an amazing brand around.
Very strong culture.
Yeah.
Which attracted better quality salespeople. And then from there we managed to build we opened an office in Armidale, a joint office with an older agent. That was quite funny. We were very focused on keeping our costs down.
Yep.
In fact, we were very lousy with the dollar. We were very tight. But it seemed to work for us. And from there we opened another office in Elstonwick, and we built up to about 6 branch offices.
I think the second offer, I think it was only about 6 months after we'd started that we opened up our Armidale office, and then there was Elstonwick, and we got to quite a few offices before we decided the next step would be to franchise.
And I think I read some research on how the franchising might have that nugget was dropped. Was it a book that you read?
Yeah, I mean, Andrew and I, it was interesting. We'd had an approach from one of our branch managers who wanted to become a partner in the business, and we quickly figured out that if we brought him in and several others, then our equity in the business would go backwards quite a way. So we were sort of scratching our heads, what are we going to do next? But we had this problem looming, and it was the 80s, the end of the 80s. The excesses of the 80s were amazing. We decided we wanted 2 new cars. What are we going to get? BMW's good idea. There's a new 5 Series coming out. We haven't seen them yet, but we'll go down we'll order 2. We'll go and pick them up in Munich. Yeah, that's a good idea. So we flew over to Munich to get these 2 cars and drive them up to Hamburg, drop them off and come back. We did that in 10 days. But the beauty of that trip was I picked up a book called Behind the Arches, which is the story of McDonald's, and I read that cover to cover on the plane. And something like we got off, it might not be quite correct, but we got off the plane and I said, Andrew, I got the answer. I said, it's franchising. Andrew said, what's that?
Going to Hamburg.
What's that?
I'm going to Hamburg.
We're doing McDonald's.
So we came back, and within 6 months, we went down to some firm, International Franchising in St Kilda Road, got their off-the-shelf franchise agreement, which was a piece of what.
Crap, yeah.
Took it off to our solicitors, got it polished up, and that was our base document, and away we went.
Yeah.
But from reading that book and understanding what's behind systems and codifying things and getting things being able to be replicated, we put together a whole lot of memos that we had into our operations manual and built over time, built our own system up. And so when we came to sell, we had an operating franchise system that was very saleable, and that's how we monetized all the hard work that we had over those 20 plus years.
And is that how you retain the best talent as well?
Yes, and that was
So
a
you lock 'em
mechanism.
down?
Yeah, that was a mechanism to hold on to the key people in each office. And it's funny, when the first guy, the thing was, he came to us for a portion of our business, and we said, "Would you want a bit of our business or 100% of your own?" He said, "Oh, I'll take 100% of my own." And the other guy said, "Hang on, I want to do what he's done." So next thing, we go from 6 branch offices to no offices except for franchise royalties funding our business, and that gave us momentum to attract more talent and better quality talent that wanted to come in and operate under our franchise.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's good. Like moving, like you guys identified that this is what the good talent around Melbourne wants. They want their own business.
And one thing that we recognised was that the strong brand was what they were after. The operating systems and all the rest of it was sort of, that was, okay, that's great, that's nice.
Yeah.
But the brand is going to drive
Position
our
the
access
market,
to the market.
Yeah.
So we just want to get hold of that brand. So they came to us for the brand. Today, a lot of franchises are selling training, and they're selling this system and the computers and CRMs and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, we got a good brand, but this is the other waffle that goes with it. It was very simple in our day for us, which we were one of the first into the marketplace in Melbourne in a franchise system, that we pretty well had the market to ourselves, and we were very fortunate in that respect. It was timing for us. It was great.
Yeah, great. So you build up to circa 42, 43 offices in and around Melbourne. What was it like? How did a sale come about? You guys are working, you're building. How does that pop up on the radar? Then how do you deal with it? And then how does it happen?
And was it always the plan? Like, did you guys, when you set out, you're like, you know what I mean,
we
for an exit?
We were sitting there one day just doing our stuff, and we got approached from a client of Ernst & Young, I think it was.
Insurance company.
And, a financial services company. And they wanted to make an offer, and we said, "Look, we're not really interested, but you can humour us if you like." And so they said, "Look, we need a day or two with the books." So we opened our books, and some days later they came up with an offer. We thought, Jesus, that's pretty good. But when you build a business, you got 43 people. A lot of those franchisees, either they were good friends that you employ, or people become pretty good friends with you. Over the journey. And we said, look, we actually said to them, I remember saying their offer was acceptable, not accepted, but acceptable, but we did owe our franchisees a right. Because over the years they'd always said, please, if you're going to sell it, please speak to us. I mean, you can imagine
So you wanted it back you sort of were hoping it would always come back the other way if they were going to sell,
Well, you could imagine if you say to these chaps who have worked for you for 20 years, look, thanks very much for all your efforts in helping build our brand. But look, we've sold the business. Next week you're going to work for Ray White. So it didn't quite ring true. So we gave them the opportunity. We had a meeting at Ernst & Young at a big table. We got 10 of the 40-odd franchisees.
The key people,
The key people to say who could do it, would do it and should do it. We got them together in a room. We said to them, and I remember Greg saying, we just came straight, hit him in the eye, hit him right between the eyes. We've had an offer. The offer's acceptable. We told them what the offer was. We should have loaded that a bit. Anyway,
Being real estate agents, come on, guys.
We actually told them exactly.
There's always a better offer.
I still reckon we bullshitted them, but anyway, we told them exactly what the offer was, and we said that we needed an answer in 7 days, and you could have 49% of the business. You could buy 49% of the business or 100% of the business. We didn't want to be working with these blokes in a minority position, so hence the 49%. And we were pretty confident they'd take the 49%. They said, look, we don't need a week to decide. Can you go into another room? So we went to the next room, and half an hour later they came back and said, yep, we'll take it.
Yeah, we want you out.
They took the 100?
We thought, oh, here we go. They'll want the. We want the 49% or the 100%. They said we want the lot. So we were out of a job. we were going down to the CES to get
cashed up.
Yeah. But it was a little bit earlier than we'd had anticipated, because Andrew had said to me, look, by the time I'm 55, I wouldn't mind sort of moving on.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that's fair enough.
And sort of what age are you having?
Well,
that
we were about
conversation?
51 at the time.
Yeah.
And so I said to Andrew, look, we better go and talk to our accountants and just make sure we're in ship. You know, if you're running a business, you want to run it like you're going to sell it tomorrow. So it's got to be
we've heard that
tight
a couple of times.
Yeah,
Yes.
so
ready
so
for sale.
And we went off to basically see if that was where we're at. And they came back and said, look, systems are great, culture's good, brand's strong, revenue's great, profit ratio from turnover we were running really well, 50%. So that was great. That's a massive profit margin. We were running it tight. They said, you're in great shape. And then they came, as Andrew said, they came back with a buyer within about 6 months and said, look, we've canvassed this. And that got the ball rolling. So we're actually 3 years ahead of where we wanted to be. So I ended up popping out at 52. Andrew had other plans and he's got on with them, obviously. This is part of it.
God's country.
Correct. And I was out of a job for 3 years because I had a 3-year non-compete. And that sort of led to getting back in again when I was 55.
But you also had that, we had that mortgage business.
Yeah.
Remember you ran that for a while and I was still involved in the Albert Park office. So I struggled
that's
along
right.
with that for a while. And
Yeah.
that was a bit awkward because it's different being at the front of the bus driving the business rather than sitting down the back.
Yeah,
And
right. So you were still part of one of the offices even
I was a
after the sale.
franchisee, but also I was a franchisor, but also I had, and I think Greg, I think that's age it sold it. I think that I was still a franchisee as well.
But it's interesting when the dynamic of the business changed, and I suppose this is where things changed fairly quickly for them, from us running it as a benevolent dictatorship, if you like.
Yes.
It was only the two of us, and I'd canvass ideas with Andrew, and we'd get things sorted pretty damn quickly. And it was a great partnership that I had with Andrew in the Hocking Stuart business, and it was funny going out into other business partnerships that didn't go so well. I go, what the hell is this all about? Partnerships work seamlessly, which they did with Andrew, and I had a couple of other partners. It was just a disaster with a couple of others. So Hocking Stuart went into a business that was basically ended up being, a horse designed by a committee. It ended up being a camel because they had 8 people running the show plus a CEO that all thought they could run it better than anybody else. And it basically just wandered away.
And it's fair to say, being real estate agents as well, there might have been some egos amongst that 8 as well.
Absolutely. That was the problem. You've got 8 estate agents' egos trying to run a business.
And they probably, I don't know if they butted headed or not, but the proof's in the pudding. 10 years later, they sold it for reputedly half as much as they'd paid us. So there wasn't much of an investment in that, and they didn't get much of a ride out of it. But it just shows you how the dynamic can change and change very, very quickly through a different operating structure, I suppose. It's so instead of us bouncing ideas off, and Andrew said, that's crap, we've got to do it this way, or I'd say, I think, Andrew, this is the way, you really think so? Yeah, okay, I trust your judgment, let's do it. Yeah. It was a committee.
We actually sat in the same office. We had the same office. My desk was here, Greg's desk was there, and it was simply just, what do you reckon? Nah. So Scott said, let's try something else. Yeah. So it was a terrific partnership, and in fact, we've known each other for, I don't know, 45 years. Yep. We've never had an argument. In fact, I've never can remember having a stern word.
No, we have no. We've called each other into the coach's box every now and then, but a couple of moments we've had. Pull your head in. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, you're right. And Andrew said the same to me, and I thought, yeah, okay, you're right. But never an argument.
That's amazing. That's super inspiring as well, because me and Pete were talking on the way down here.
Yeah,
we're the same. Like we've been known each other. We were apprentices together.
Yeah,
we're in business together. Been in the coach's box a couple of times.
We've been in business for 5 years, so we're babies compared to you guys.
Yeah.
Hang on, is this about us or you blokes?
Yeah. I know. I was going to say, like, it's not. It's like it's hard. Like having a partner.
Yeah.
If you don't get it right, is like
And the other
biggest
thing
disaster in
the other
business
thing we
that
used
you
to
can
say is if you have a partner that thinks like you, talks like you, does what you do, you don't need a partner.
Yeah.
So we had complementary skills, and I to this day, Andrew was far more outgoing and very social and all the rest of it. I was a bit more reserved.
I'm the Greg of the group.
Yeah, and and that wasn't I wouldn't say it wasn't my role. It was still to be out there and be entrepreneurial, but Andrew was very much a front man and served that role exceptionally well for us, networking and all the rest of it. And behind the scenes, I'd be beavering away in collaboration with Andrew.
Man, mate. You were the ideas man.
Well, that's what I was getting at. Yeah.
I'm glad you said it. But could you put it down to a couple of things? Like this is, you guys starting a business so early on, and then, we teed up to chat with Andrew today, and straight away Andrew was like, I want Greg here, so I organised Greg to be here. Like, that friendship just sounds amazing. Like,
yeah.
You guys have been through so much in business. What do you put it down to?
I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. We didn't socialise together. We had separate lives outside of the business, but when it came to the business, it was very cohesive. So we never lived in each other's pockets. We did socialise, and as we do today, but we never lived in each other's pockets. We got separate groups of friends, but we get together on a much probably more regular basis now than we have for years. Oddly enough. I don't know. It's just the chemistry there. It worked exceptionally well, and it held us in great stead.
Is it potentially a mutual respect as well? Like, I think when I think about Benny, I think we have, we are totally different, but you have this respect for the other person, and you sort of back them, and you back their judgment. Their judgment.
Most definitely. I think that's.
I recognise greatness.
in yourself, yeah, exactly.
And I thought that I'll go along with that, and I think that as Greg says, in partnerships, there's one that's normally dominant, and one that's more, I say, subservient's not quite the right word.
Submissive. That's a bad word.
And so long as you respect the person that's making the decisions, and as long as you don't violently disagree with it, I tend to go with it.
Yeah. And if you both just want best outcome.
That's what I was going to say.
If deep down.
Trust. That's probably my biggest thing with Pete is I've always trusted that we both want the same
and look,
thing.
We had a lot of
laughs.
We had a lot of laughs along the way. I mean, we enjoyed the time. I mean, enjoyed the ride. I mean, our culture in the business was fabulous. The people we had around us were a disparate group. I mean, they're all the same personalities. There's some tough ones to deal with, and we used to say you build a team, but deal with them individually. Like everybody, you want them to work together, but don't expect you're going to have them all being the same person. This person's requirements are different to that person. He's got a kid on the way. He's already got 3 kids. He's aspiring to do other things with his income. This guy is simply just looking after his family. There's different attitudes within the business, so you have to treat with them differently, but you want the same, pulling in the same direction.
Yeah, that's a great point.
You mentioned earlier the word respect, and I think we both respected our work ethic.
Yeah.
And when we started, I think for 5 or 6 years, we did work 7 days a week. We would put our runners on at 6 a.m. We'd meet at the bottom of Richardson Street with a bag full of flyers, sticking in letterboxes. We will be in your street this afternoon. Well, whether we're there or not, it didn't matter. We're only around the corner. So we'd walk the whole of Richardson Street. So 2 or 3 kilometres, and then take our runners off and put our business suits on, and away we go. So it was really a mutual respect that we were both kind of, whether we were in each other's face or not, we were both out there banging the drum. And
but there's all sorts of little anecdotes about what happened during the day-to-day bump and grind of selling houses, and we've all got quirky little stories. But we would be out there putting our open inspection boards and auction boards out rostered, so we'd roster ourselves on with the team. So it wasn't like you guys have to do it and we're going to sleep in on Saturday. You're up at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock down, getting all the stuff out, putting all the flags and boards up, banging them into the board. And turned up at one in Cardigan Place one day, and I turn up there and the board's graffitied with all obscenities on the board. The house has got obscenities written on the front of the house in red lettering. And I've gone, now what? I thought, I know what. So I've ripped the board off, got a stock board, put the stock board on, waited for the hardware store to open up. I've gone in and said, look, I want a paintbrush and I want the thickest white paint you've got. Got both, went back, painted over the obscenities on the house, put the stock board up, put the flag on, sold the house. The guy was having a dispute with his neighbour next door. And I thought, well, I was focused on, got to make the sale, got to make the fee, got to keep the vendor happy.
Yeah.
And we did all of that on
Whatever
that
it
day.
takes.
Yeah,
Some
it
great
was
stories.
roll up the sleeves. That's right.
There was we were selling an apartment in St Kilda, and we had a heap of people that wanted to buy it. And I remember the morning of the auction, the owner rang up and said, "Look, we've had a change of circumstance. We're not going to sell." I thought, this is going to be beaut, isn't it? I've got an advertisement in the paper. There's going to be hundreds of people coming along all ready to buy, and I've got to stand there and say, "Sorry, folks, we're the owner's not selling it. They've decided to pull it."
Yeah.
So I thought, what do I do here? So I went banging on a few of the doors of the neighbouring properties. And they're all similar, if not almost exactly the same. To say, hey, look, I was meant to auction this place this afternoon. That ain't happening. But if you were thinking of selling, I've got a whole lot of people.
We're ready to go.
All these people would turn up and they'd say, well, why aren't you opening? Well, we're not going to sell that one, but go and have a look at this one because we're going to auction that one in an hour's time. And we auctioned it. We had all the documents. The documents were much the same, just to change the lot number, and we sold it. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
No, not 1 cent of advertising.
Yeah. Whatever
How
it
well we
takes.
got away with that.
Yeah.
Different times.
Yeah. Whatever it
Different
takes. So you guys sold. You got
Yes.
out. Greg, you said you had a non-compete for a while there.
3 years, yeah.
Start with you if you like, Greg. What did you go on and do after that? 3 years?
Well, I mean, I started a family a lot later than Andrew. Still had 3 kids going through private school. Seems to be a big drive in real estate, private school fees. People get stuck.
Keeps you working.
It does. I mean, but it's bizarre. Guys often, it's school fees. It's just part of the picture. But anyway, I had school fees to pay. So, and I still had a passion to get on and do it. And it's funny when that's your craft and you still got a bit of time up your sleeve, and I had no other focus really, decided to get back into it again. But the landscape had changed enormously in that period of time. So, 10 years later, we got to 11 offices after 10 years, but for scale, we need to get to 20. And really didn't have that extra 10 years available to get to the 20. But in the meantime, a lot of the agencies that we were competing with were stuck on the ownership model, branches only, or a single trophy office, and that was it. Maintain control. One after the other brands, Jealous Craig, Hodges, Buxton's, Biggin & Scott, Barry Plant, the list goes on and on, Sweeney's. O'Brien's have come in, all offering a franchise offering. So when we went to compete under the new brand, there's a myriad of different offers on the table. So we didn't have what we enjoyed before, people coming to us and quality people. We had to scrap for people, and that retarded our growth. So last year, market was going very strongly. We recognised that when Andrew and I sold, one thing, either Andrew said it to me or I said to him when we were selling, the market's booming. We know it's not going to last.
Yeah.
So we acted.
That's the masterstroke
2007.
right there.
And what happened in 2008? We didn't know. GFC.
That's wild.
So we were very fortunate. So
But people do.
That's not
compliment
fortunate.
us.
That's just,
on our timing. Yeah, I know.
that's just understanding that the market's not going to be hot forever, and because the average consumer assumes it's just going to keep running.
That's right. And so for last year, much the same. The market was booming, and we roared up to November last year. So consummated the deal in the middle of last year, and at the same time, I had an equity position in the Albert Park office that was basically our flagship office.
So this is the Greg Hocking.
The Greg
for the
Hocking
people playing
brand.
along at home.
Oh, sorry, the Greg Hocking
So the
brand.
Greg Hocking.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you started back where you started your first office.
Well,
Hocking
actually,
Stuart.
I had a business partner, long-standing, one of our business partners, John Holdsworth, a lovely fellow, and he passed away, unfortunately, in 2019, and I stepped back into the Albert Park office to steady the ship and get things on an even keel. But then getting out of that I was delayed for an extra year because of COVID. So having sold out last year and everything, I was sort of back to being, as Andrew said, down the back of the bus again, which is a very uncomfortable position to be for me.
Especially when it's your name as the brand
Correct,
as well. That's
correct.
weird, isn't it?
So
Steve telling you off.
So at the end of the day, by the middle of this year, I decided to withdraw altogether.
You've seen what I was doing down here, you see.
Andrew's onto something down here.
Yes,
What's going
of
on?
course.
So, Greg, the assumption that I would have made would have been the second time round would have been easier. But listening to what you've just said then, because the market had changed so much and the competition and your timing was so well the first time, it was actually harder.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is pretty crazy because you had all the lessons.
You think you'd have the trick book?
Yeah. You've got the trick book, but I guess times moved that quick.
Well, they
Things
did. The
changed.
landscape just changed and changed considerably.
But you can also remember all the changes that had occurred in the industry. You've gone from a time when we had dummy bidding, which was, at the time it was legal, but probably if you reflect on it, was fraudulent. You've come to a time where you've got to start telling people almost tell them what the reserve is. I mean,
documentation changed.
The documentation and the level of red tape that
regulation
that you had to go through was incredible. So it was a different industry. I think it was almost a different industry. When I left it, and I speak to a lot of people that were in it when I was there and still in it. They say you wouldn't believe how different it is now.
But even for me coming back after. I'd left the day-to-day agency business, even with Hocking Stuart, to be basically the CEO of the group for quite a number of years, for about 7 years, the last 7 years. Then I had another 3 years of hiatus. So I hadn't listed and sold in Albert Park for 10 years.
Yeah.
So I had to go back and basically reboot from scratch.
I still remembered you though.
Well, yeah, oddly enough. But the actually turning point for us was getting that fellow that I mentioned, John Holdsworth, on board. It really kick-started our business. But we did very well, and we had a great business there. Great business.
Were you this time second? So the first time round, there was no intention of selling?
Yep.
When you started the second time, were you thinking, all right, I'm going to build this up and we'll flip it and we'll flip again this time?
No, it wasn't. No,
Because
actually,
you went with Greg
I
Hocking
was
as the name
really,
again.
but a couple of things happened, and one of them was going back to John Holdsworth. But Andrew knows. Andrew and I worked with John for a long, long time. He unfortunately became ill and passed away. I think about 71 years of age. But the silly old prick, he was still shuffling around 6 weeks doing business before he passed away. I mean, I looked at that and I thought, no, I don't want to do that. It's just, and when I think about it, this year is 50 years since I actually started my working life. And I thought, well, how long do I want to keep on working for? 50 years, I think I've got a fair old shake. So I thought, well, do I really need to? And, Andrew said before, how are you finding retirement? I thought, love it. Why didn't you tell me about this before?
It's a secret, Andy.
It's interesting, you talk about retirement, and here I find myself down here, and it gives me something to do. You don't have to do it, but you can do it. Yeah. And mowing the lawns is one thing, but cattle don't need too much, but you can always go and have a look at them. And we've got some horses up the top there.
Feeding the horses with Lean. Shout out to Lean. I know she said she was buzzing that they were feeding the horses when they first got here.
Yeah, that's it. We've got a job for you here, Lean.
No, she's a busy girl. She doesn't need a job. Amazing. Thanks, Greg. Andrew, you started a property company?
Yeah,
property advisory company?
That sort of just happened. I didn't plan on it. In fact, I was ready to go and do something completely different.
Yeah.
What, I don't know. But people would ring me up and say they wanted to sell their home, and them thinking I was still an estate agent. I've said, look, I'm not selling homes anymore, but I can come and help you out if you like in choosing the agent and negotiating fees. And
also more a vendor advocate.
Yeah, vendor advocacy. And
working for the other side.
And I thought, well, hang on, I might be able to make a quid out of this. So when people would ring, or I'd go canvassing the business, and it went okay for a while, but it ran out of gas after a while.
Yeah.
When I started vendor advocacy, there weren't too many of us doing it, and a bit like the real estate business with all the new franchisee companies making it difficult for mobs like Greg to find franchisees. There started to become a lot of vendors advocates, and it lost its fun. I mean, and the industry was pretty ratty. I mean, from times when you'd walk out as being the vendor advocate and your client sold this property and you'd be almost chaired off the field, to times when you'd go and have 3 or 4 auctions on a Saturday and none of them would sell, and the client saying, well, hang on, I'm paying you a bit of a fee here and I still haven't sold it. So it lost, the shine came off a bit, and I thought, oh, let's do something else. So bought the land down here 7 years ago and built the house and been living here for 4 years, and it's fantastic.
Out all right. Yeah.
I'm trying to get Greg to buy the joint next door. We have a lot of fun down here.
A bit late.
Yeah, fantastic. Guys, we asked about what's important in a partnership. What do you think, what advice would you have to us, for our people listening, about having successful businesses? What's the mindset, and what's the secret sauce, to leading a team and building one office to 40?
Yeah, and building such strong brands. I mean, you've done 2.
Yeah, that's a good question.
That you've built 2 brands that you've been able to build up, not only franchise but then sell. What's the secret there? What's the key to sort of being able to get a brand that strong?
Yeah, I think, well, for us it was just, as I said, going right back, we were fortunate that we basically road tested our relationship, working together so strongly for basically 3 years, and had a very solid foundation of trust and respect, as Andrew said, recognising complementary skills, didn't expect the same thing from each other, but knowing that, forming the view over time that the complementary skills doubled your input enormously, and you're not competing against each other. So many businesses have partners that compete against each other. They don't have a partner, they have a competitor within their own business. And that just destroys the dynamic. And within the organisation, your staff pick up on that as well. And the culture becomes toxic at times, and that they just can't grow. Yeah. And then they start blaming each other for issues that come up, and then the thing fragments and off they go, and they never get momentum. We got momentum because we were working so hard together. And as you said, it wasn't like, oh, Andrew, we're going to work 7 days a week. We both said we're going to work 7 days a week. So I was like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. But I think you have to. It was sort of like when we got to a point where it was we found resistance in the marketplace, we both recognised we've got to pull back on that and allow the business to grow and develop. And the other thing too is, we haven't touched on it, is that we reinvested fiscally into the business out of our earnings. Yes. We put in, I remember the first time we wanted funding, so we went down with our business plan on the back of a napkin from Il Gambero that we wrote up whilst we were still working for Biggin and Scott to figure out if we had a cash flow that would work. We went down with that, presented it to our bank manager and said, look, we need $10,000 as an overdraft to start the business. Yeah. And he's looked at our business plan on this napkin and he said, no, I can't give you $10,000. And we said, okay, 5. He said, no, I'm going to give you 25. And we got, no, we don't want that debt. We don't want that debt. No, we don't want that debt. Anyway.
Then we rushed down to Rose second-hand office supplies.
But the thing was, we funded our growth through our own cash flow. We weren't borrowing, and we were reinvesting our own money. We weren't dragging great globs of money out of the business. We used that to grow the business, and yet we did very handsomely out of it, obviously, along the way, personally, but we weren't greedy as such. Yep. And that word is endemic in the industry, unfortunately. People just have their own self-interest. We work together as a partnership.
Yeah, and you both had that common goal, that common vision. It's like kids looking up to mum and dad going, oh, well, they're working together, they're part of a team, heading towards this goal rather than, like you say, individuals competing, going, who do I speak to? Mum, do I go speak to dad? You know, who's going to back me?
Or he could have a fantastic run for 6 months, and I'm sort of, I'm not doing so well. And then I'm having a great run. So I wasn't saying to Andrew, hang on a minute, you're not pulling your weight here, son. Let's balance this out. There was none of that. It was all going to the pot. Yep. We're in a partnership. We're in this together. I recognise that, you might have a bad trot for a while. He recognises I'm having a bad trot for a while, but we know it's going to come good. We're backing each other. we're going forward together.
Yeah.
It's a bit like the coach for football team. You know, you often hear people say they'll play for the coach.
Yeah.
Is that if we worked hard, we didn't actually expect people to work hard, but they just did.
They wanted
because
to.
They saw us working hard.
You're setting the example?
Yeah, that's it. On the other side of the coin, you have the manager or the boss or the franchisee that says, look, I'm the boss. I'm not going to work this weekend. You guys go and do all the work.
Yeah.
That doesn't work
Yeah.
in real estate, I don't think. I think you've got to set
People
an
lose
example.
respect.
They lose respect for you.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
They lose respect for who they're working for, and it just tails off. And then ultimately, your talent will leave. So you can't build a team. You know, we were so focused on building a team of like-minded people, recognising that they don't all perform at the same level, but trying to move them through. And we used to talk about the top third, the middle third, the bottom third. Recruits that come in the bottom, we want to get to the middle third and at least maintain it because they're productive for us. They might go up and down a bit. They might get into the top third, drop back again.
Yep.
They're never going to be champions, but they're great, okay?
Yep.
But if they're constantly in the bottom third, we'll turn them over. You're not for real estate or you're not for us. You're going to have to go. The middle third may move to the top third, and they want to stay there. And they were great. They were our performers. We'd reward them, and we would make them the heroes in the business that people would aspire to do what they're doing. And that worked very well for us. But we weren't prepared to sit around and tolerate people that weren't contributing. We would turn them over. And that was, again, part of the management process. Some managers get lazy over time, enjoyed some success. They think, well, and one of the other philosophies that we had was that we put salespeople on because we're too busy to handle what we're handling.
Yes.
Some businesses put salespeople on to generate more business, but at the same time,
so you waited till you had.
That's right. Sometimes it's the business in a slump and think, oh well, we're going to get more business by putting more salespeople on. They're out there trying to do business themselves. They're not supervising new recruits. And the whole thing fractures.
And you've got more competition in an already sort of slow market.
They're scrapping for listings. They can't get a listing. We were generating business, and we would say, "Hey, Tex, can you handle this listing for me? I'll supervise it with you, but can you do the legwork?" Okay, fine. Then they find business in the marketplace because we teach them how to canvass and get new leads. And they start to generate their own business. So they develop up. So we don't have to give them listings anymore. We get somebody else in because we're again too busy and develop them through.
Build from the bottom up. That's the only way by the sounds of it in the real estate.
But when you've got 5 people sitting around scratching their backside saying, well, where's my next listing coming from? And they're looking to you, and it's like a seagull pit. You know, they're all squawking for that chip. How come he got it and he got a better one than I did? Why couldn't I handle that one? Why are you going with him? It's a mess.
So I guess motivating that team and incentivizing them, like you were talking about earlier, was super important to build that culture. So important.
Can I ask, I just want to sort of ask about, like, going back again on partnerships and stuff. So Greg, you 2 big brands built up and were able to sell off, both super successful. Would you say, like, part of the superpower, because reading between the lines, so you ended up, even though it was Greg Hocking Real Estate the second time, you had a business partner in that as well. Would you say the superpower in business, or in your case, is by having good business partners? Like, could you have done it without them?
I was saying to Andrew before, I was just saying before that our partnership was such a joy as it worked its way through that we didn't have issues. The mortgage business, I had a partner that didn't work out. And I thought, well, how can that be? I've had a great partnership. How come this one doesn't work? Then I moved into the Greg Hocking business with another fellow who was actually one of the instigators, and I take my hat off to him. But that one didn't work out either for various reasons. And I thought, how come that's not working out? So it was difficult for me in those subsequent to the Hocking Stuart experience to understand how come people don't work together, how come we're not going in the same direction. So I got the flip side of
they had a hard act to follow.
Yeah, exactly. I got the flip side of what a great partnership was.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, the second, the Greg Hocking business, I had to buy the fellow out and take full control back because I just wasn't getting the inputs.
And did you bring someone else in later down the track?
No.
So just...
No. Just it's talking to how important you might even have this great business idea, but if you haven't got the partner, the great business idea may not even get to the heights it can. If you got the wrong business partner,
and you need to take a break. So Andrew could take a break knowing the business was going to keep going. And I could take a break and knowing the business is going to keep going. There's somebody in the chair to look after it. So there's other things that are complementary to just having a business partner, practical things.
And
illness can jump in at times, and that somebody's there that is going to look after you, that sort of thing. So those sorts of things are also important. Things are unforeseen that when they pop up, that was important.
Yeah, so things always happen, but you've got a like-minded person, similar motivations, similar care factor, all that sort of stuff that you can lean on.
Yep,
fantastic. Anything else, Benny?
What are your thoughts on, I guess, where the market's at and where it's potentially going?
It's all about interest rates. End of story. I mean, there's all sorts of other background noise that's been going on. Employment, unemployment, COVID, this, COVID, that. It's all about interest rates, and interest rates are still ratcheting up. The market won't settle until the market appreciates that interest rates have plateaued, but that's not going to spur growth in prices. It's going to be when they start coming back down again and trend down that the market will pick up speed again, and that's a long way off.
But you might also find that some sections, and people talk about the market being a market.
Yeah,
within
that's
that market, there's lots of small markets, and you'll find that some markets. Toorak, for example, does the fact that interest rate goes up at 0.5% really worry? No, it doesn't worry people too much. And there's always people who want to buy there, so it's supply and demand. But you go out to areas on the outskirts of Melbourne where you might be an estate agent and you might only get one buyer walking through that door a month.
Yeah.
And he wants to buy something and he likes that property. Are you going to sell it for that price, or you're going to wait for the next buyer? No, we'll take that buyer at whatever price he offers. So you find the prices will suffer in those low demand areas. Some areas, even down here in the peninsula, I mean, down here they're still getting whacking great big prices for properties down here. And this is after, 5 or 6 interest rate rises in the last 6-7 months. So some parts of the market will still perform okay.
Yes.
2 weeks ago in St George's Road, Toorak, a property sells for $75 million, another one sells for $80 million, record prices in the face of interest rate rises going up. Come on.
Yeah, that's wild.
But for the mortgage stress hasn't bubbled to the surface yet, and people have just been hanging on, and their household budgets are under enormous strain. Interest rates this time last year were 2%. Variable rates. They're now heading at 5.5, heading towards 6 and more. That's an enormous jump in after-tax income that you have to spend
that's
on just
cash.
paying your interest. Don't worry about feeding the family, clothing them, holidays, anything else. And sooner or later, people will say, "Stuff it, we're out of the house. We're going to go and rent. We're just too much." That's in the outer suburbs, but that affects market sentiment. And what is happening, even in the top end of the market, is that the turnover has contracted. And for estate agents, of course, turnover, is what it's all about, and it's already dropped off quite considerably, and that's going to be the case for quite some time. And even in some of the tighter inner suburbs, you can see the sentiment is driving things. As Andrews quite rightly says, in the wealthier suburbs, people aren't buying with loans; they're buying with cash. But the canny buyer says, "Well, bugger it, I'm not going to buy now. The papers are telling me, the news is telling me, the clearance rates at auctions are telling me that the market's soft.
Yeah.
Why am I going to stump up a big price? Bugger that."
So how much? Obviously, you've got the factual things, the tangible things. Interest rates are rising. These factors. What about that sentiment piece that you touched on then? Like just people going hands in the pockets. I'm not going to play.
And that's what they're doing.
Because it's different factors, isn't it? There's the literal household income, what can I lend? I can lend less. Okay. But it's that motivation to actually transact as well,
Yeah,
isn't it? That's in the
people
bin.
sense blood in the water.
Yeah.
They think, oh, okay, well, let's just see
Oh,
how
wait.
this thing plays
wait.
out.
In 6
Exactly.
months' time, I'll get it cheaper.
I'll just see how it plays out. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not going to jump in now.
Yeah.
Why am I going to rush? And
Yeah.
of course, when the market's roaring, we turn up to an auction, we've got 3 or 4 buyers. Fantastic.
Yeah.
When the market starts to ease, we might have 2 or 3 buyers. When it gets a bit tighter, 1 or 2.
Yeah.
When it gets really tight, we've got 1 or none.
Yeah.
And that's
tough.
where we're heading towards at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And if people are genuinely going to sell, then they will have to take that price.
And this is where people get a little bit. The paper goes, oh, the clearance rates are lifting. That's great. It's week on week, they're coming up. Why? Because the people in the marketplace selling are sellers.
Yes.
And they're accepting what's being offered.
Yeah.
So lower volume, but motivated sellers.
Yes.
So lower volume, motivated sellers. They've got the clearance rates have got to start to increase a bit. But a boom market is high 70s, early 80s clearance rates.
But with high stock as well.
With
high
big
turnover.
stock
Yeah,
levels.
that's it.
Big stock levels.
Because you can have a high clearance rate with low stock, which can be
Stock's
deceiving.
tightening. Clearance rates are in the 60 to 65% band at the moment, and really not moving much from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Anything to add to that, Andrew?
No,
No,
I think you
you're
covered it.
happy with that
What-
synopsis?
No, I think that's
what
it.
about it as a business, fellas? Like, and it sounds like you've timed the market perfectly twice there, Greg. So, because the market's turned both times after your sale, but I'm tipping I think in 2017 maybe the market was a little bit softer as well. How do you keep a real estate business moving forward or afloat through these the softer markets? Because we just launched one. And we launched one in the eye of the storm.
The key is turnover. And it's because when turnover tightens, fees tighten with them because agents are fighting on every front to get business. And one of the key factors, of course, is going to sway a seller is fees. So not only there's a turnover coming off, properties available to list for sale, the margins that you'll get out of each sale are tightening as well.
Yeah.
So it's watching your costs. I mean, if your overheads are too high, you're going to have to look at those. And some businesses have flowed straight into this market, debt laden. They've loaded up on debt. They've bought houses, cars, boats.
They've done a
nice
brand
boats,
new office
holidays.
fit out. They've done
Exactly.
stuff.
Office fit outs.
Yeah.
You name it.
Yeah.
And now they've got debt on. They've still got a service. Interest rates
Their
have gone
interest
up.
is going up as well, yeah.
And their turnover's down, and their margins are tighter. So there's some pretty tough times. And this is where the industry does shake out, and shakes out lower performing agents as well, because instead of just walking in and listing a house, now we're really scrapping.
Yeah.
And I think also that a lot of the people that are salespeople in these businesses, they've been through 10 years of fantastic real estate. They've only virtue been, as
Skill
Greg
levels,
was saying,
yeah.
thrown a chip, look after that. He turns up 4 weeks later, the place sells, he thinks he's a bit of a champion.
Yeah.
And he gets the awards for what a great salesman he is. But they've never sold in a tough market.
Tough market, 100%.
And when the thing turns around and
Haven't
you
got the
say,
skill set. Yep.
what happens now? Oh, I don't know. I don't quite know what to do. And
Yeah.
so a lot of your staff also just aren't capable in dealing with this market. So
And
it is confronting.
Turnover is everything, and experience is everything.
and Paul Keating's recession we had to have in the late 80s, early 90s, 25% of our sales staff disappeared within a couple of years.
Yeah.
Not because we were sacking them,
Yep.
because the attrition rate was borne by they just basically couldn't make a
They
buck.
couldn't make any money,
Yeah.
And who remained, which was a great rebound for us when the market picked up,
Yeah.
our best and most skilled sales team.
Right,
So when the market picked up momentum, off we went again.
So it's only the strong survive sort of thing.
It's a law of the
cream
jungle.
rises
Yeah.
to the top.
Yeah.
And the
pretty
market
much.
does change pretty quickly. It's amazing. Every time the market goes from a bit of a slump to a strong market, sometimes it can take a month.
Yeah.
A couple of good sales, and that kicks the whole thing on, and away we go.
Yeah, and that's the same how quick it can fall as well. And that's why you end up hanging on to the bottom, isn't it? Because it sort of it feels like you move sideways for so long, and then before you know it, you're holding your bag at the bottom.
Yeah, but people are eternally hopeful, and they just think, "Oh, this is an aberration, aberration," and then we're getting deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And now it's a reality, not an aberration; it's a reality, and we're going to have to deal with it. And some people just haven't. I mean, when you've been in the industry for long enough and you've been through those cycles, as we've seen and experienced ourselves, you get an idea of what's coming. And as I said, and we, going back to running our business fairly tight, and we didn't have debt. We weren't laden with debt, so when the market tightened, we were fine.
Yeah,
our business was fine. It was robust.
Yeah,
because our financials were strong.
So that's the advice out there for anyone starting a business or anything like that.
Yep.
Try and build with your profit, with your turnover.
Yep.
Don't run out and get all this extra money to supercharge yourself.
Yep. Have a buffer in the business.
Yep. But that worked for us. I mean, it might be that you're a different personality and you want to splash the dough around, but
I think it's like prepare for the worst and hope for the best, isn't
you.
it? You got to appreciate and we didn't. I remember when we started, right?
Yeah.
And we've got a third business partner, Mark, who's a lot wiser and a bit older and a lot wiser than us. But he used to say to us, "You boys haven't experienced the tough market yet." And we used to walk out and go, because until it's actually happened, it doesn't sink in, does it? And then it happens, and like you said, you've got to get that experience. And you've got to figure out how you can make money in soft and booming markets.
That's it.
It's crazy.
Successful business.
I've got another question, fellas. Now, most people, when they think of investing, right, property in Australia particularly, property's the number one, right? Most people think about how they're going to get
straightforward.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward, bricks and mortar, and we're lucky we live in one of the greatest countries in the world. But I guess with you guys are at the top of that game. But did you have any side passions on other things that you invested in or collected?
Yeah, we decided to buy one commercial property each year.
Oh, that's cool. Yep.
Which worked for 3 years until we didn't.
We got to be busy.
But that was still property again, right? That was still property again. What about investing in other businesses?
We built a bit of a portfolio of commercial property, which is actually proven to be pretty good, actually. And we're now at the turning point where we're starting to look at selling off a couple to reduce some debt, because capital appreciation is something that we're not forward-looking to.
The land tax.
So we're looking for income return. So we're tightening up on that and acting on it now. So
that's a bit of a masterstroke then. If you, in hindsight, that strategy, if they've still got the properties now.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting when we bought it. We bought these properties because it was for our future. Well, now this is the future.
We're in the future.
Yeah, of course.
And now, we're probably not looking for capital gain, but cash. And these properties are terrific, but with land tax taking a fair chunk of it, and yet with the tenants seeming to have the upper hand and not paying,
and interest rates going the wrong way,
up, it all sort of turns around on you a bit. So that those things that were ripping investments at the time have served their purpose. There's been capital growth, but we're now divesting ourselves of them. Some of them that we think should
just tightening up the portfolio,
to provide us a couple of bob in the kick.
Hang on to some really good core ones and move on the others. And looking at maybe a small development on one of them that we're holding as well, which is the site's a bit underutilised. So there's opportunities there.
We know a couple of good developers as well. If you're
there
looking.
There you go.
And you know what? Lawnmower fuel's probably not cheap either, Andrew. So you need to keep the lawnmower juiced up.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Juiced up. No, this has been an awesome chat, guys. Really appreciate your time and really appreciate you inviting us down. This guide country.
Well, it's been good having it. I've got 2 lawnmowers you can actually jump on.
Lean and bond. Lean and bond.
Are we doing that afterwards? No, it's been good. And first one on the road, guys. So well done to all.
Yeah, everyone that chipped in and helped.
Great work. Great work. And you even managed to get the rain to cease.
Get the rain to go away.
I've got a question. I want to shout out Al, good friend of mine, like a brother to me. So Al's your nephew, Andrew, and that's how today came about. But Al told me a story about the shingles on your roof. Is there a story that did they really? He was saying to me that they came off a church in Europe, and then they got
when we were building this place here. It was all getting a bit out of hand. It was all a bit too expensive, so we thought we won't go the second-hand Welsh slates. We'll do the colour bond sort of stuff. And I didn't really want to do colour bond because I think the old second-hand slates sort of make it. And our builder was contacted by a mob in Mildura. They were ripping an old church down, and they said, "Do you want the second-hand slates?" and they offered them to me, and it wasn't that much more than the colour bonds. So we said, yeah, we'll take them all. But we got right to the end and over the stables there out. You may have noticed there's a set of stables out there, and we wanted to have the second-hand slates there as well, but they ran out. So then they were ripping down a stable in Windsor Castle.
Oh,
And
as
this
you
bloke,
do.
He got hold of a truck full of them, so that's what's sitting on the stables
They
out
do,
the back.
mate.
It virtually makes it.
Yeah, it makes it.
We were
Exactly.
saying, like
Right.
you said, it was been here 4 years or something. It looks like it's been here
forever.
24.
No,
you know?
100%.
That might be.
Can you imagine
that might be my
Don't know where you're going with that one.
sorry, mate. It's a bit of a whack.
Yeah,
No,
looks
but can
like
you
a
imagine
shit
having a
house.
colorbond roof? Like,
Nah, correct.
It's just another house
Looks-
with a colorbond roof, you know?
You know, it's got
That's
that
incredible.
heritage touch to it. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
thanks.
the mob that designed it, a guy called Steve Akehurst, builds these sort of Hampton-style
Yes.
places, Connecticut sort of places, and I think we got it.
Oh, he
but,
nailed it.
we'll see.
Nailed it.
We'll see.
Fantastic. Beautiful. All right, guys. Thanks again.
Good
We're
on
going to
you.
let you get away. It's your wedding anniversary today,
Correct,
Andrew. Is
yes.
that right? Congratulations, Wendy, Andrew.
How many
off
years,
to a
Andrew?
day spa. I think.
38 years.
38.
Might be one of
38
my
years.
anniversaries too. I better check the record.
You better check the date there.
One of your anniversary.
I don't know. Anyway, thanks guys. Thanks for
Good
the
on you.
Awesome,
opportunity.
guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Please like, share, subscribe, guys. We're on the road. Might be a thing on the road.
Yeah, this is sick. This is
Poor old
awesome.
office might not see us in there. Please like, share, subscribe. See you at the top.
Peace.